Loving God, your desire is for our wholeness and our well-being. We hold in tenderness and prayer the collective suffering of our world at this time. We grieve precious lives lost and vulnerable lives threatened. We ache for ourselves and our neighbors standing before an uncertain future. We pray, may love, not fear, go viral. Inspire our leaders to discern and choose wisely, aligned with the common good. Help us to practice social distancing and reveal to us new and creative ways to come together in spirit and in solidarity. Call us to profound trust in your faithful presence, you, the God who does not abandon. Amen. Saint Ignatius of Loyola,
Pray for us. I am very excited today to welcome our guest speaker, Father Frank Buckley. Frank is always an inspiration to me and one of, I think, a great examples of the interconnectedness that Jesuits can represent. He is a Jesuit priest. He's also a psychologist. He also is leading right now a regular meditations in the morning and has a lot of experience with yoga as well and is part of the Ignatian Yoga program. So brings together many different elements of both the spiritual, physical, psychological health. He's had some experience working in different educational settings. He did his regency at Bellarmine, San Jose. He worked there with high school students, and also I know has done some work in counseling in other areas at the University of San Francisco. So experience in a couple different Jesuit education contexts. He's also in a very unusual situation, currently raising his niece, who is at Immaculate Heart, so a high school student at Immaculate Heart. So he's aware and lives in many different worlds, and I think I'm so excited that he's able to bring to us some of his insights and reflections around this topic of what it means to flourish in these difficult times, health, wellness, and COVID-19. So without anything more, I will turn it over to Frank.
I love the introduction, and let me just start with a little caveat that this is, my dissertation was on flourishing, but I'm stepping into a little uncharted water with you today. So I'd love your feedback on it. I'm bringing some worlds together that I would not normally bring together, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a great presentation. And originally when Bob and I talked about this, I was kind of imagining it for the faculty, things to do to help their students flourish. But then when Bob said it's going to be more admin and faculty, I tweaked it to bring together two things that are very close and near and dear to my heart. Like Bob said, I'm a clinical psychologist, but in the last few years, I've really moved much towards neuroscience and what it has to offer. And in doing that, I've tried to really combine these worlds with Ignatian spirituality and what Ignatian spirituality has to offer to the conversation. And so this is a first attempt in really in a conversation with you guys to bring these together. Okay. So with kind of jumping right into the deep end, I did a conference at UCLA maybe 5 years ago on interpersonal neuropsych. And out of it came this book called The Healing Power of Emotion. And really at the heart of neuroscience is this idea is that we're hardwired to connect. Like that's just the way we're biologically built. And we do this through emotions. Now, let me just say, this was a little bit of a stretch for me to dip my toe into this world, yet alone jump into it. As a psychologist, I was very much trained with cognitions, which is called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, this new world of neuroscience has what's called ABT, which is affective behavioral therapy. So it's like really focusing on emotions and the healing power of emotions. Now, while this is a new idea to neuroscience, it's really nothing new to Ignatius. One of my favorite things over the years with Ignatius was this idea he would come back again and again to, called sentir con iglesia, which is not thinking with the church, but feeling with the church. I think Ignatius was genius in that we all love the church. That's why it's so hard to think with the church. But when we focus on affect, that's where things can shift. While I've spent a lot of time in education, most of my work has been around the unhoused and addiction. So, and I've looked a lot at how do people transform. And this work that Diana Fascia was part of that UCLA conference. She's a clinician in New York City. She came up with this book that's called The Transforming Power of Affect. Now, while the book is phenomenal, I think it especially touches this time during COVID-19. And this is what I really want to share with you. I have an article coming out about this, but I think you don't even have to buy the book. Like, the really meat of it all is this idea of undoing aloneness. And the way she says you do this is you look at suffering and joy. It's not either or, like these two are two sides of a coin. They always live together. But what she's brought up with neuroscience is that the way the brain is just wired is we have what she will call a negativity bias. And this is something that psychology has talked about for years. If any of you remember Dr. Ellis, rational emotive therapy, he said in the 60s, the three biggest problems for humans are: one, we focus on the negative; two, we then enlarge the negative to make it bigger than it is in reality; and three, then we generalize it. So, you know, I will tell you, I've had friends, Jesuits, call me with kids in their school where two sisters were suicidal within a week of each other. Like, it's really hard on adolescents, I think. And I think it's because of this negativity bias. You know, who would think online schooling was okay, but then spring break, we're just going to shelter in our house? Like, that's not the way adolescents move. That's not the way we're wired to connect. So what I found is what is really helpful is this Dr. Fascia's idea of looking at ways of undoing aloneness through Zoom meetings, through class get-togethers. The tennis coach for Immaculate Heart the other day, they have exercise every week, but the other day he had all the girls just go in the kitchen and bake together. Like, this is a time, back to St. Ignatius, he would always say, engage the imagination. If we're alone, it's because of poverty of the imagination. And how, as admin, as faculty, can we help these kids undo their aloneness? And then, of course, looking at our own lives, I will tell you, this is the weirdest thing, this COVID-19. And diagnostically, it presents in my own life like nothing I've experienced. Like, you'll be kind of going along fine, and then it's almost like the carpet's pulled out from under you, and you're like, is this really the new reality? Like, and you can go to a dark place you've never even gone before. Like, people haven't been able to touch, you know, in months, you know, in weeks now, you know, so we know physical touch is important. We know connecting is important. Our world is changing. So I think that undoing of aloneness, and what Dr. Fascia talks about is glimmers of hope, is how do you look at those glimmers of hope? So the sorrow and the joy, she uses the metaphor that I like the most, is this idea of like an asphalt parking lot. And in it, there's a crack, and in the crack, a beautiful daisy blooms. So we're not gonna say COVID-19 doesn't exist. Yeah, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but also in the middle of the pandemic, there is beauty and there is healing. And two places where it says emotions can act as powerful catalysts for healing. Two places where I've seen healing really happen has been around One was I recommend in America Magazine, there's a great article called We Are All Monks Now. And, Ignatius talked about being contemplatives in action. Anthony de Mello said the Jesuits in the West missed what he meant. We put the accent on action when St. Ignatius wanted the accent on contemplation. So that article on being monks in the world is superb. And I think it's also like, what is the kind of monk we want to be in the world? And with emotions, like, if you can focus on the emotion and look for the glimmer of hope, and when there is that glimmer of hope, the simple response is, tell me more. So the other place I wanted to talk about was Monsignor Torgeson at St. Monica's, which is a great parish in Santa Monica. For his Easter Sunday homily, he gave a beautiful clip for a model of the church from the movie Apollo 13. And in the movie, if you haven't seen it, the head of NASA, as the whole thing is going south, he says, in the history of NASA, there's never been a greater disaster than this. And Gene Grant says, with all due respect, sir, this could be our finest hour. And I think if we look at the church right now, Pope Francis has been doing everything he can as an 80-year-old pontiff to reimagine the church as a field hospital for the wounded. And none of us have been able to really move in that direction. And I think what this possibility with this COVID-19, Father General Arturo Sosa said the other day that it really, the glimmer of hope is for the first time we're realizing that we are one humanity. We're all in this together. There's nowhere to escape. There's no island we can go to get away with it. So this glimmer of hope is, I would challenge you, invite you at Loyola to look at the emotions that are being stirred up, and then to say, it's no secret to you, we have adolescents in Orange County has the highest suicide rate in the country, that these kids are pressured out of their minds. How could this be our finest hour to reimagine education in a way that is healing and transformative for our students? As far as like helping students, helping ourselves move in that direction, this thing with emotions is really tricky. Like cognition in psychology, this is a whole nother class, but it's called top down. Like we start with the brain and go down. But with emotions, it's what's called a bottom up. So to get in touch with emotions, and with trauma, we can dissociate. But we start with the body. And I love Bobby Carley at the yoga retreat brought this up. The issues are in the tissues. So we start with kind of checking in with the body and then notice what we're feeling, any sensation at all. And then once you notice the sensation, then go to the affect, and that's where the healing happens. The other piece that I really love is this book Dr. Amen just put out recently. And if we have another chance, this would be another talk, Bob, but for the counseling department, I love this, The End of Mental Illness and the Birth of Health. This could have never come out at a better time. He wrote, this got printed on the, right as COVID-19 was breaking. And he's done a little more research on COVID-19 because a lot is, the end of mental health is to not think of mental illness, but rather of brain health. And if we want to have a healthy body, we've got to have a healthy brain. So we start with, how do we get the brain healthy? And what Dr. Amen says is there's a health problem in our country right now. So the United States, geography is not my area, so you'll just have to believe him. It's 4% of the world population. And yet we have 1/3 of the COVID-19 cases in this country. Why? Because we have a health crisis in this country. Do we have to wash our hands? Absolutely. That's part of it. I correct the prayer, not social distancing. Physical distancing is necessary. Social connection is important. But with this health, our number one priority right now, that he would say, is to boost the immune system so that we keep a healthy brain. So let's go. What would that look like on the Loyola campus, starting with the group of you that's in this room? So, and one other just little point. Mental illness has so much stigma around it. When I was in the counseling center at USF, I begged them to change the name to the Wellness Center because none of the kids wanted to go to the counseling center. It's just shaming. People, diagnoses don't get a good rap. So what would health look like on the Loyola campus? So this is what I have just, this was actually, for your classes, the one thing I would recommend is like right now, I would say, just because I get calls from parents of kids who are suicidal, depressed, anxious, cutting, you name it. I think COVID-19 is a time with our students to really move from that negativity bias to helping them kind of look at the glimmers of hope. So I would also say building community is really important at Loyola, like this group Ann's put together, amazing. But like, if you could, like I would add, it's so great if you can just do a check-in. And Bob told you I'm raising my niece, so I only do Jesuit community once a night. Thank God, because all the Jesuits talk about, I feel like I could get a PhD in COVID-19. Like we just talk about it ad nauseum, and then I get on Facebook and then do more research. Like stop the madness. It's okay. Do the New York Times briefing. That takes a minute, and then let it go. But then in the check-in, I would really focus more on glimmers of hope. And one of the ways to move out of the negativity bias is something I've been doing with the Unhoused for 6 years, and it's the best exercise, #1 evidence-based practice for flourishing. It actually rewires the brain. It's called WWW, and thank God it doesn't mean World Wide Web, but what went well. And you name 3 things that went well, and it can be big or small. Anything from, I won the lottery at 7-Eleven this morning, to, wow, this morning was so great, and to get back, I love your office, to see you and get a little taste of Loyola. Like the neurons fire exactly the same way, and neurons that fire together wire together. So just by using these 3 things that went well, you can actually rewire the brain. And this is this whole Dr. Amen's idea of a healthy brain. Mindfulness, I would say, like if you can start the little group with just taking 10 breaths together. And then I'm not going to do a whole mindfulness thing, but I do want to share my favorite thing. It comes out of Harvard, Dr. Andrew Weil. It's just a little way to bathe the heart when you feel anxious. So I'm going to invite you to do this with me. Again, because we don't get a lot of touch right now, just take your hands to your heart. And you can just lower the eyes or close the eyes just so you feel safe. And we're just going to breathe 3 times, but we're going to make the relaxation response kicks in when the exhale is longer than the inhale. So we'll inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And I'll talk you through it 3 times. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Let's do it 2 more times. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beautiful. Last time. Give it all you got. Inhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Release the hands. Deep inhale. Exhale, blow out a candle. Excellent. Just take a moment now. Just notice how you feel. And people won't, I'll even do it before I have to do a homily. People won't even know what you're doing. So that's a great one. 10 breaths or bathe the heart. And the main thing is just to kick in the relaxation response is the exhales longer than the inhale. And then just the a couple other things. People have, gyms are shut down. Please find a way to exercise and get the students exercising. I do, if you can do jumping jacks, walk around the block, anything at all just to get the heart rate up. People are always like, Dr. Buckley, what kind of exercise should I do? All the research shows it doesn't matter, but if you can get yourself to sweat, it's really helpful. And believe me, I'm preaching to the choir. I used to be a huge yoga guy, and Core Power is closed, and I wear sweats to work. And the other day, because the Archbishop was talking, I put on my clerics. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these pants must have shrunk in the dryer. So like, get out and exercise, and I'm going to join you on that as well. Then rest. This is a huge one for the brain wellness. Is the brain needs sleep. Like, unplug at night. Do not stay up all night. What is that called? Binging on Netflix. Like, the more you can keep your routine, the better. I'm a big believer, 8 hours of sleep. If you can get up early, have a glass of water by the bed with a little lemon, hydrate, start your day off that way. And then last thing, again, community, building a safe environment. This thing, we're wired to connect, whether it's Zoom meetings. A good friend of mine, we have a Zoom coffee once a week on Thursdays at 10. It's like one of the highlights of my week. Like, be creative in how you build community and try not to isolate. And then 4 circles of health. This is Dr. Amen's work, Brain Thrive. So like, there are 4 circles that really help with this. This biology is fall in love with your brain. And the interesting thing with the biology part is the neuroplasticity of the brain. Like, the brain is really wired to change. And one of the best things for the brain, I'm glad, because I bought my niece a ping pong table for Christmas. They say actually ping pong is great to do for the brain, crossword puzzles, reading, stimulating. The worst thing you can do is retire, so that the brain plasticity continue to keep the brain alive and active. Psychological is kind of what I was telling you. Avoid the negativity bias, that what went well, exercise. Environment is social. So the idea of that connection, physical distancing, but social connection. And then the last thing is spiritual. And this is really broader than Ignatian spirituality or even Catholicism. But like, the book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Like, try to find a purpose in your life. I will tell you, the most meaningful thing I do all week right now is the only thing that stayed open on the Blessed Sacrament campus is that food pantry. And like, last week was one of my highlights of being a Jesuit. We had Loyola kids, we had Immaculate Heart, we had Cathedral, like, they were helping pass out the food. The N-House were all doing the physical distancing. Volunteers brought food, so we had more than enough food. And it was really a way of finding meaning right now. My last thing I'll end on was, I had a spiritual director when I did tertianship, and he said, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I want to talk about my desires. He's like, forget about that, Frank. That'll get you in trouble in the next hour. Focus on where you come alive and then move in that direction. This isn't Ignatius. This is a psychologist, Barbara Fredrickson. She calls it broaden and build. Once you find that area where you come alive, broaden and build and move in that direction. All right, so I've thrown a lot out there. I've never done this presentation before or brought neuroscience and Ignatian spirituality together. If you liked it, let me know. If there were things you didn't like or didn't understand, please feel free to, we can discuss further. Thanks.